Welcome to Chronicles by Candlelight. You are listening to Fracture, where a gifted young tech wizard leaves his small town for a prestigious magic institute, hiding his acceptance into a deadly assassin track while secretly training to become a skilled fighter. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and click the bell button for notifications. New episodes drop every Friday and Saturday. Episode 2. The virus on Mr. Lorenzo's laptop fought back. It rerouted processes, triggered decoy errors, and tried to bury its core beneath layers of fake system files. I adjusted and traced the real failure point as it shifted. Timing and order mattered because if I pulled the wrong thread, the whole thing would bite back. One by one, Fracture's crosshairs winked out as I sealed exploits and corrected malformed syntax. The heat from the radiator loosened my shoulders as I worked, and my hands moved with more confidence as circulation returned. 15 minutes later, I leaned back and wiped sweat from my brow with the towel. The laptop sat open in front of me, finally stable, and rebooting. "Ain't nothing to a G," I said, and let a grin spread across my face. Mr. Lorenzo raised his eyebrows. "That was surprisingly quick," he said. I shrugged, trying to look casual, though my chest still thumped from the effort. "Took a lot out of me." I glanced at him. "Normal viruses take me 5 minutes tops. This one wanted to fight back. How does a teacher end up with a virus like that?" I waited for an answer, but he didn't give one. Instead, he tilted his head. "Your power is something special," he said. I rubbed at the scar across my nose, uncomfortable under the praise. "Not good enough," I muttered shyly. "Planning to get into Aetherium?" He leaned closer and lowered his voice. I froze. "How do you know?" I asked. "What? That you applied secretly?" "I wasn't sure," he said, "but I suspected it. Any young person who hopes to be something in this world wants to compete with the best. Simple as that. Compete with the best." "Me?" His words lingered in my mind. The entire world watched anyone who walked into the Aetherium Institute. Was he saying I could be one of them? "It would be a dream," I said quietly and stared at the floor. "But my powers, they're not good enough. Not compared to what's already out there." "Well, it's a good thing dreams are what life is made of." Mr. Lorenzo gleamed with certainty. I blinked at him and felt a mix of admiration and confidence. I closed the laptop gently, returned it to him, and slid the chair back. My hands were finally warm and circulation returned. "Thanks," I said, and headed for the door. He waved the gratitude off. "See you in the big leagues, kid," he said, and tipped his coffee mug toward me as though it were a toast. I paused at the door, glancing over my shoulder at him one last time. "See you," I said finally, and felt a mix of determination and uncertainty. I stepped back into the hallway, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and started walking toward the exit. Each step felt heavier with the possibility of achieving my dream. Though it was a long shot, I had taken the first step by applying, and if I managed to get in, I was going to make the most of it. The hallway stretched out ahead as an unseemly moment of quiet settled. I caught my reflection in the glass panels of the trophy cabinet and noticed the determination in my blue eyes. Mr. Lorenzo's words left me with enough confidence to burn brighter than any fear. I was ready for something bigger. I stepped out into the sunlight and let the warmth wash over me. A faint, dry breeze carried the scent of exhaust and asphalt warmed by the morning sun. My scuffed matte black moped waited patiently for my return. Years of hand-me-down abuse meant it peeled in places, but it was the best friend a teenager could ask for. I'd saved up every spare allowance, every birthday cash gift for 5 years just to get him. Nothing fancy, like the cars some of my classmates drove in, but he was perfect to me. I swung a leg over the seat and pressed the starter. The engine grumbled to life and a low growl vibrated through the frame. "Perfect," I grinned, and took off. A small weight lifted from my chest. Now one person knew about Aetherium, like saying it out loud made it all the more real. However, the main person was my dad, probably still at his cluttered desk or tinkering with some failed project. He hated the idea of Aetherium. He was the one who filled my head with thoughts of Solia to honor my mother's memory. I missed Mom, so I accepted without argument. I would do anything for her. Dad had been thrilled when I said I'd follow in her footsteps. However, sooner or later a letter would be delivered in the mail confirming whether I made it or not. My stomach churned as I thought about it. What would I say if I got in? How would Dad react? He'd probably disown me. I shook the thoughts from my head and focused on the road ahead. My small town, Pride County, sprawled lazily on either side of me. Engine oil from the mechanic's garage mixed with the sweet aroma of bakeries. I inhaled it all. The street curved past the single shopping centre, the kind of place where everything was predictable. Grocery, coffee shop, and a discount electronics store. It was all just worn brick walls and faded signs. I wondered what Aetherium would smell like, and the capital city, Everfall. All I knew about it was that it was acrid with magical energy, even the surrounding towns. They say things like magical creatures lurked there. There wasn't much magical activity in Pride County. Teens with magical powers were the most exciting thing about the place. Everfall probably had better sights too, like towering buildings I would never see in my little town, polished walkways and gardens where plants glowed faintly under their own magic. My pulse quickened as my fingers gripped the handlebars tighter. The moped rattled over a pothole, reminding me I was still here, still in this town. I turned out of the main road, pushed the throttle a little harder, and felt it respond beneath me. As I rode the last few blocks, the houses grew smaller and older. One in particular, my house, came into view and my chest tightened. We had moved here after Mum died. Dad thought smaller was better, easier to manage. I thought it looked sad. Windows too close together, shutters hung slightly crooked, and the siding peeled like old skin. It looked like it was frowning. I cut the moped into the driveway carefully, not to scratch the peeling paint along the handlebars. The tires crunched against gravel as I dismounted and nudged it toward the back of the house, away from the street. The back door welcomed me with a familiar creak as I slipped inside, expecting the empty quiet that I usually met when I skipped school. Instead, Dad was there, standing by the dining table. My stomach dropped. Neither of us were supposed to be home yet. "You're back early," I said, and tried to keep my tone light. His eyes were fixed on an envelope in his hands. "What is this?" he asked, with a rigid posture and anger in his voice. I glanced down and noticed the crest on the unopened letter. Aetherium. My pulse jumped. I got defensive immediately. "It's a crime to open someone else's mail," I said. He didn't flinch. He held the envelope higher in an almost threatening way. "I'm not joking, Reg. What is this?" I can explain," I swallowed. "There is nothing to explain," he snapped. "You aren't going." I froze. "Why not? You went," I argued. His jaw tightened. "That was before He stopped himself. "Before what?" I took a step closer. "Is there a good reason I shouldn't go?" "We can talk about it." "There is nothing to talk about," he said firmly. "Your mother would have been disappointed." My hands curled into fists. "You don't know that. She isn't here to tell me, but you are right about one thing. There is nothing to talk about." I took the letter from his hands. "I'm going to Aetherium no matter what you say. My dreams are bigger than this town." Before he could say another word, I turned and strode toward my room. I heard him mutter something behind me, but I didn't look back. I didn't want to. I slammed my door, and the sharp click muffled the world outside. The atmosphere in my room felt thin compared to the storm in my chest, but it helped. I stood there for a second, staring at the familiar mess of my room, and felt betrayed. The narrow space held everything I was and everything I wanted to leave behind. Posters curled at the corners on the walls. Old Evermore High textbooks leaned at crooked angles on a sagging shelf. I yanked my bag off my shoulder and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud, slid down to the floor, and spilled notebooks and loose papers. I swept my arm across my desk and sent a couple of books skidding onto the carpet. I grabbed the stress ball from the corner of my desk, a cheap foam one Mr. Lorenzo handed out during finals week, and squeezed it until my fingers ached. Then I threw it. It bounced off my desktop and ricocheted into the wall before rolling under the bed. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, and the tears came whether I wanted them to or not. They burned as they slid down my face. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, but that only made my head pound harder. I hated crying. I hated how weak it made me feel and how trapped I was in this room and this house and this town. Your mother would have been disappointed. My father's words echoed. That one hurt the most. It lodged itself deep under my ribs where it could do real damage. I sucked in a shaky breath, and then another, forcing myself to slow down. Crying didn't change anything. It never had. Eventually the tears dried up, and the shaking eased. I wiped my face on the sleeve of my hoodie, then stared down at my hands until they steadied. The room felt colder as the adrenaline faded. Then I looked at the letter. It lay on the floor. The sharp and elegant Aetherium crest sat stamped in blue wax at the corner. I stared at it for a long time without moving. I didn't even know what was inside. My stomach twisted. I had fought with my father, shattered whatever fragile calm we had, and I didn't even know if I had gotten in. For all I knew, the letter could be a rejection. I held it for a while, and I imagined seeing words that confirmed every doubt I had ever had about myself, that I wasn't good enough, not special enough. My chest tightened all over again. If I hadn't gotten in, I wasn't sure what that would do to me. Somewhere between my talk with Mr. Lorenzo and the ride home, I had built too much hope. I tossed the letter onto the bed, unable to stand the weight of it for another second. I shivered as the cold settled deeper, then pulled off my soaked shirt and traded it for a thick sweatshirt. I swapped my jeans for sweatpants, lay back and stared at the ceiling, tracing the familiar crack that ran from the corner toward the light fixture. I knew every inch of my room. It felt strange to think that I might not be staring at it much longer. The idea scared me and thrilled me at the same time. My hand drifted to the letter again without me really deciding to move it. I picked it up and held it against my chest, and felt my heart thud against it. Then I rolled onto my side and pulled the blanket up around my shoulders. My eyes grew heavy and sleep crept in. The deeper I got, my thoughts blurred together. Images of Aetherium rose unbidden, identical to the pictures I had seen. Then they faded into memories of my mother's warm laugh, and the way she used to brush my hair back when I stayed up too late. I fell asleep like that, clutching the letter. When I opened my eyes, I found myself smaller. My hands looked short, and my feet didn't reach the floor when I swung my legs. I sat on the edge of a bed in my old room. Shelves lined with books curved gently around the room, and my mother sat beside me. She looked the way she did in my best memories. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and she wore a flowing brown dress that brushed the floor when she moved. She looked simple but elegant as ever. Her smile reached her eyes, and when she looked at me, it felt like the world narrowed down to just us. "Come here," she said. I scooted closer without thinking. She wrapped an arm around my shoulders and pulled me into her side. I fit there perfectly, like I always had. A book rested open in her lap, its pages thin and slightly yellowed. I recognized the cover. "You want this one?" she asked. I nodded hard. "You always do." She laughed softly, then cleared her throat and began to read. The words flowed easily, like she had written them just for me. "There was once a boy," she read, "who lived at the edge of the world with his mother. The land was quiet, but fear lived nearby. The room around us shifted. The walls stretched and reshaped itself. It turned into a sky washed in gold and grey. The shelves faded, replaced by rolling hills and tall grass that swayed in a steady wind. I stood now, taller than before but still young, bare feet pressed into cool earth. The fear took the shape of a dragon," my mother continued. "It slept beneath the mountains and waited." The ground trembled in the distance as a shadow moved slowly across the vast hills. My chest tightened as I saw the dragon rising, its body massive and dark, scales catching the light like dull metal. Its eyes burned hot and bright, fixed on me alone. I took a step back. "The boy was afraid," she said gently. "Anyone would have been." The dragon roared, the sound deep and endless, and my knees shook. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run. My throat closed tight and my hands shivered at my sides. "The boy had no armor," she read, "no shield, only a sword from his dreams." The air around me stirred. Leaves lifted from the ground, spun together with the wind, and shaped into a blade that felt light and solid in my hand. I gripped it, surprised by how real it felt. The dragon loomed closer, and its hot and heavy breath pressed down on me. Tears burned behind my eyes. "Just before he cried," my mother said, her voice firm now, "the boy remembered what his mother always told him." Her words carried across the field. "In a world full of kings, queens, and dragons," she read, "the young prince is to be feared the most." I straightened with the sword steady in my grip. My fear didn't vanish, but it made room for resolve. "Because in his dreams," she continued, "are unfathomable kingdoms and worlds." I ran, feet pounding against the earth, wind rushing past my ears. The sword hummed in my hand as I closed the distance and struck. The blade cut clean and true, slicing through scale and fear alike. The dragon let out one final sound before it collapsed into the ground and dissolved into ash and light. Silence followed. The hills brightened as the sky cleared and blue stretched endlessly overhead. The field faded, and I found myself back on the bed, tucked into my mother's side. She closed the book with a soft thump. "And that," she said, and smiled down at me, "is the end." I looked up at her. "He wasn't scared anymore," I said. "Oh, he was," she replied. She brushed her gentle and familiar fingers through my hair. "He just didn't let it stop him." She leaned down and pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "I will always love you," she said. The room began to fade, colors softening at the edges. Her arms loosened around me. I reached for her, and my panic flared as the world slipped away. "Mom," I shouted, "don't go." Subscribe for new episodes. See you next time.